So here's lecture 3 of unit 6, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just doing a lot of these back to back here. So this is behavior. We're continuing with behaviorism. And this one, we're going to talk about latent learning and social learning and cognitive learning, all those things that sort of go with that. We're also going to talk about the pacing of rewards from operant conditioning. So what we've learned about so far is we've talked about classical conditioning and we've talked about operant conditioning. You'll remember that classical conditioning is where you are taking a behavior that you already know how to do. It's a natural behavior. And what you're doing is you're combining it with a new stimulus. So instead of the food making me salivate, the food will still make me salivate, but also the bell that's added to the food, that will cause my salivation as well. So that sort of natural thing. And the speeding ticket, the flashing police or car lights become the condition thing, because the speeding ticket's going to give me distress. But now that I put the police with the speeding ticket, this look of police and the flashing sirens will now cause distress, whatever the case may be. So that feeling, that emotion, that thing that I already know and I know how to do, that is now going to be created by a new stimulus, the fear of hearing the Jaws theme, whatever the case may be. I already know how to do the response. What I'm doing is I'm changing the stimulus. It becomes conditioned. Now, the difference between classical conditioning and operant conditioning is operant conditioning, I'm not changing the stimulus, but now a stimulus is going to give me a new skill. I get paid to go to work, therefore I'll go to work because I want the reward of getting paid. I get grounded if I'm late past my curfew, so I'm not late past my curfew. So I'm doing a particular thing to either get a reward or to avoid a punishment. Remember, rewards reinforcers come both positively and negatively. A positive reinforcer is money, something that's added to my life. A negative reinforcement is something taken away that I want taken away. I no longer have to do that extra assignment. I don't have to empty the dishwasher, something that is relieved of me. I turn off the alarm so I don't hear the ding, 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 ding. That's a negative reinforcement. Something is taken away that I want to be taken away. So a reinforcer is something that I want, as opposed to a punishment is something I don't want. Positive punishment, you are spanked or yelled at for doing something bad. Negative punishment, you're grounded or you can't have your phone or something's taken away from you. We talked about both classical and operant conditioning. I've got to acquire the particular skill when I learn chaining and operant conditioning, pairing and classical conditioning, extinction if I'm not getting the reward, generalizing the stimulus, and stimulus discrimination as well. Generalized stimulus is, I think, all women act alike because of one particular experience, but discrimination is realizing that just because I had that one experience doesn't mean that everybody necessarily acts that way. Now, the schedule of reinforcement is very, very important when it comes to learning. Because again, if I get the immediate reinforcement, I'm going to learn a lot faster than delayed reinforcement. And this goes along with the idea of the marshmallow test that we talked about before. Humans, as well as animals, were more likely to learn from or we're more likely to do the behavior and learn it quickly from a quick reward. I do it, I get the reward. The bear shows up and attacks me and immediately causes the fear. I get paid every time I do something. Immediately it's going to change my behavior towards doing that. But humans are much more likely than animals to also learn from delayed gratification. The fact that you're going to get a paycheck in 2 weeks, a trophy for a championship, grades today for a paycheck you're not going to get until your 20s, all of these particular things. If I punish my dog for something it did 2 weeks ago, it's no good. It's like when you come home and the dog peed in the house and that's something that happened 3 hours ago and suddenly you're punishing them for it. They don't remember it really happening. It doesn't make sense. You got to kind of catch them in the act. And at the same time, you got to take them out. And when they go outside and they go to the bathroom, you got to reward them at that moment or while they're going. You praise them, whatever else comes with that. The marshmallow test, which we briefly talked about before, where you took 5-year-old kids, would you like to eat the marshmallow now or wait 10 minutes? And then you'll have 2 marshmallows, and half the kids will wait and half the kids will eat the marshmallow right away. So again, that later gratification. But as we go through our development, we have to wonder to ourselves, is it worth the investment? You know, substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, nicotine. I could sit here all day and warn you of the dangers of vaping, but all you're worried about is that little nicotine rush right now. You're not thinking of your lungs in your 60s or your 50s, and suddenly you can't breathe, and the long-term effects and everything else. Very spontaneous, very egocentric, as teens are. The fatty fast foods, the sexual promiscuity, all these things that, yeah, you might get pregnant, yeah, but you know, that happens to the other person. So if we don't get the punishment right away, you may become pregnant. You may get clogged arteries. Your arteries are so good right now, you're not worried about that. It's only later on do we start to become concerned about that as humans. But a sign of maturity is sort of this promised land. But then at the same time, you know, you take someone like me, I should be saving all of my money for retirement, but I should still kind of go on vacation right now, because why would I save for a trip to the Alps when I'm in my 70s and I can't walk them? I mean, shouldn't I go now when I could still walk the Alps? So it all becomes kind of a questioning thing. So as with rewards, when punishments are not immediately paired, sometimes there's confusion what it's for. You know, if your parents suddenly go, hey, 3 weeks ago you did this, you're grounded. You know, that doesn't work. You got to kind of be caught in the act, or it's not really that effective. So the schedule of reinforcement is incredibly important. How often is the action rewarded or punished after the desired behavior? So this kind of wraps into operant conditioning again. The continuous fixed schedule, where every time I do something, I get rewarded. I'm going to learn that behavior very quickly. But once the reward ends, the behavior is going to end as well. If I get a quarter every time that let's say my job is to type a paper. I type a page and I get $3. Type another page, I get $3. Type another page, I get $3. Then I type another page and I don't get paid. Well, do I continue typing? No, because I'm not getting reinforced. So a continuous fixed schedule, the nice thing about a continuous fixed schedule is that I'm getting rewarded, so it's going to inspire me to do it more. But once I don't get rewarded, I'm going to stop the behavior. A partial variable schedule, it's going to take me a little bit longer to learn that particular action because it's spread out, but it's also going to lead to me going, hey, I got rewarded for this before. I may not get rewarded this time, but at some point it just might work. So you're gonna, it's less likely to lead to that extinction. You know, if every time I asked a girl out, she said yes, and one girl said no, I'm gonna stop asking girls out. You know, they're supposed to say yes. Like that would ever happen. But if you're somebody who is a partial variable schedule, I had this roommate in college, and he used to just use these lame lines on girls. You know, if I wanted you for your body, would you hold it against me? He'd say something stupid like that. And 20 girls in a row, they'd all reject him. But that 21st girl would go, you're funny. And so that would be his inspiration, continue to use the line, because he knew at some point it was probably going to work. So he could take all the rejection and he'd be persistent because he knew at some variation, some ratio, at some point, someone's going to be a sucker for that line. So when it comes to a ratio is the number of responses that we have. A fixed ratio means that every few times I do an activity, either I get a reward or punishment for that. Again, typing pages. I type 5 pages, $3. Type 5 more pages, $3. 5 more pages, $3. 5 more pages, no money. I'm going to stop. I'm going to quit. I'm supposed to get paid $3 for every 5 pages. If I don't get it, I'm going to stop. An exam is scheduled at the end of each unit. If suddenly at the end of the unit I go, there's no test, forget about it. Well, I'm not going to study anymore. You know, after 5 fouls, you're ejected from the game. If I don't eject you from the game after 5 fouls, you're just going to keep hacking away. So again, fixed ratio, you're going to learn it quickly. These are the rules. This is how it's set. But once the reward or the punishment don't show up anymore, you're going to stop doing it. Every time you're late, you're grounded. Then one time you're late and you're not grounded, I'm not going to be on time anymore. All right, so you learn the behavior quicker, but the extinction happens sooner. As soon as you're not getting rewarded or you're not getting punished, you're going to go away from it. A variable ratio tends to be more effective. It takes a little bit longer to learn it, but it also takes longer to forget it. Okay, a slot machine. If you ever go to Vegas, and you should go to Vegas, gambling is wrong and immoral, but you go to Vegas, you play the slots, you pull the lever, you may win, you may lose, but you hear all these other people winning, all these other people, which is why when you go to Vegas, which you shouldn't go to Vegas because it's gambling is wrong and immoral, but you go there and you can hear all the casinos, you can hear all the noises, all the lights flashing. Oh, someone's got to win. Why not me? So you put a coin in, nothing. Put a coin in, nothing. Put a coin in. Hey, I won 3. Put a coin in, nothing, nothing, nothing. Hey, I won 10, nothing, nothing. And they keep, you never know when that reward's going to come up. And since you never know when it's going to show up, you're more likely to keep doing it. Even though I'm not getting the reward, a lot of times I'm getting nothing. At some point, I'm going to hit something. I think I'm going to get that. So slot machines, it takes longer to learn that. Most of us, we put 1 coin in, don't get anything. I'm not going to put a coin in there. But once they get you in there, and again, gambling can become very, very addictive. Once you get that little bit of a win, the door-to-door salesman, I don't know who the next person who's going to buy it. It could be 2 doors I knock on, 5 doors I knock on, 10 doors I knock on. I don't know. That's a variable ratio. Again, my wife is in new home sales. She doesn't know if the next 2 people are going to buy houses. It's going to be 10 more people till someone buys a house. It could be the 11th and the 12th person are going to buy a house. She doesn't know. So she's got to treat every customer as if that's the next big buyer. And again, when it hits, it's fantastic, but you also got to have that frustration and be used to that rejection and everything else. And sales is a different beast because of that. So again, variable is going to take longer to learn, but your behavior is going to be persistent. Fixed ratio, you're going to learn it quicker, but extinction is going to happen sooner. So the ratio is the number of times. Type 5 pages, pull the lever of the slot machine, the number of times I do something, as opposed to an interval is the amount of time between rewards. Does it happen every hour? Does it happen every minute, every day, every 5 days, whatever the case may be? And that would be a fixed interval. I get paid every 2 weeks. I know in 2 weeks I'm going to get my paycheck. All right, so you're working all week, you're going to get a paycheck. You got a Monday through Friday job, you're going to have the weekends off. It's something you can work forward to. If I gave a quiz every Monday, being paid $10 an hour, this is going to be, I'm going to learn it very quickly. I'm going to change my behavior to go for this. But as soon as they go, you know what, we can't pay you for this next hour, I'm not going to work the next hour. You're not going to do it as often. If I suddenly go to work and they go, we don't have your paycheck, I'm not going to that job anymore, because I get paid this certain amount every couple of weeks. And once I don't get that, I'm going to stop it. So I'm going to learn it very quickly. But once I don't get it, it's going to become extinct. Now, a variable interval means I never know when I'm going to get the reward. Dialing a radio station to win a prize. Be the 108th caller when we play this song. I never know when they're going to play the song, but at some point they're going to play the song and there's going to be the reward. A pop quiz in a class. You don't know when it's going to show up, but you're going to be more prepared for that class because you never know what's going to happen. Going to the pool, not knowing if it's going to rain or not. It could rain, it could not rain. Do I go to the amusement park? Whatever. You're kind of taking the risk there. This takes longer to learn the behavior, but you're much more persistent because the reward can be much greater, and you never know when it's going to happen, but you know it's going to happen sometime, and you want to make sure you're there when it's happening. I want to make sure I'm listening to the radio station when they play that song, because when they do, reward's really big. So again, longer to learn the behavior, but more persistent. You're less likely to give up on that. Okay, so there are some things on the partial schedules of reinforcement, the fixed ratio versus the variable ratio. And again, fixed is better than variable as far as learning it quicker. Variable is better as far as the consistency and the intensity of the behavior. All right, I'm sorry, other things there with fixed and variable, showing you situations there. Now, cognitive learning. Again, whenever we look at the word cognitive, we're talking about the ways that we think. All right, causes us to change the way that we use, from what we used to think to what we think now. When we accommodate our schema, making little changes. Christmas is a little different now, whatever. And this learning happens latently. And when I talk about latent learning, I'm talking about learning without trying to learn. You just pick it up. You pick up your native language. You pick up the accent. You have a language and you use words that are very similar to other teens your age. You sort of have the same dialect. You drive to pick up a friend. You probably need a GPS the first time, but if you do it again and again and again, you just suddenly know the way there. If you're driving home, You know it's a left here and it's a right here, but if I asked you what the street names were, most of us wouldn't know the street names. Being able to sing along to a song that I've heard again and again and again and again, even though I've never sat there and read the lyrics, since that song's come, I've never studied the song, but since it's come to me, I've just sort of picked it up. All classical conditioning learning is latent learning, and most of our operant learning is also latent learning. Very little of what we do are we studying. We're not really studying just who we become and how it develops our personality and everything else. Not a lot of studying is involved in that. So when it comes to latent learning and just doing it for learning for the sake of learning, we talked about this. We talked about the study with the markers before, and the kids who weren't expecting a reward and got a reward. They were really excited about it. The kids who were expecting a reward, once they got the reward, they stopped doing it. The kids who never got the reward. Well, they did a very similar experiment with rats. They took 3 groups of rats. They were given a task of learning a maze. Group 1 was rewarded each time that they ran it correctly. So this group 1 is right here, fixed ratio. And they continued to improve, but they always got rewarded when they improved. And as the days went on, they had fewer and fewer errors. Fantastic. Group 2 was never given a reward. All right, that's my control group. So they just learned for the sake of learning and then just sort of evened out. We're just doing it and not getting a reward. Group 3 was only given a reward after the 11th day. So again, here, never rewarded, never rewarded, never rewarded, learning at the same rate as the green who never gets a reward. Then suddenly on day 11, they get a reward. They're like, whoa, we could get rewarded for this? And their learning became much more intensified, even more than the people who've been rewarded every day, because they never know when the reward's going to happen again, which is much more persistent learning. And eventually they had very, very few mistakes. So again, if it's a variable ratio schedule, I never know when the reward's going to come. I never know when the learning's going to come. That's where we're learning for the sake of learning, and that's latent learning. It's not necessarily rewards and punishments. It's just naturally socially adapting. We build a cognitive map, and a cognitive map is how you discover your way around life. It's when you're walking the hallways of CWHS, and I said, go to this English classroom. You already know I got to be on the 2nd floor. I've got to be on the south side of the building, and that's where it's going to be at. It's red or cold, I'm not sure. But that's where I've got to be in order to do these particular things. And then as you go from class to class, you're not looking at every hallway. You just know how the school's set up. Then if you break up with someone and you don't want to see them, you know the alternate route you can take and all of these other things. You've built a cognitive map by paying attention. And as you're young, your cognitive map is pretty much your neighborhood, and then you ride a bicycle and it becomes a little bit larger, and then you get a car and your cognitive map becomes even bigger. But we do this based on experience. Driving to school, this becomes my little 5-mile radius, and then it becomes bigger, then it becomes bigger, and then it becomes bigger, and we don't need the GPS as much because we kind of know where we're at. Again, living here at CWHS, and knowing where everything is at right here, if you always rode the bus, you just basically know your neighborhood and then where the bus dropped you off, wherever your neighborhood might have been. But then once you start to get a bike, you kind of know your little area, your little space where I can ride my bike around and everything else. And then you get a car and you start to visit friends at high school that live in other neighborhoods. Your cognitive map becomes a little bit bigger. That's sort of your base, and then it becomes bigger and bigger. Bigger, spreads out. Same thing that you do with your house. Spend most of your time in your room. You can walk around there blindfolded, and it expands and expands and expands. So cognitive is the way that we think. Now, there's 2 types of motivation that go with how we think, and this goes back to the motivational unit. There's intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivations are things that I can control. I want to do this because I like it. I want to get a good grade in psychology because I like good grades. So intrinsic motivation, less stress because I control it. Extrinsic motivation, I cannot control. All right. I got to get good grades because the school I want to go to, intrinsically motivate, requires these grades, extrinsic motivation. My parents require these grades, extrinsic motivation. So things I can't control, even things within me, my hunger is extrinsic motivation. my need to go to the bathroom. I need to breathe. You know, I can't go, yeah, you know what? I don't feel like breathing. I've got to breathe. So anything that I cannot control on my own is extrinsic motivation and can impact the way that I think, the importance of breathing, eating, being with friends, whatever the case may be. Remember also in motivation, we talked about this over justification effect. The fact that when you do things because of the reward, then suddenly that thing doesn't become as much fun. We talked about this of being an athlete and then you're on a travel team and all these other things. You just want to blow out your knee because, you know, it's no longer fun. It's no longer a sport. It's the person who decides they love baking, so they open up the bakery. Well, now I'm baking what other people want me to bake, and I got to make sure that I hit my budget, and I got to hire these people, and and it just loses a lot of its joy and everything else. So sometimes the thing that you love to do, you don't necessarily want to do it for a living. You just want to do it for fun. So you keep the fun with it. Self-efficacy, which we talked about from the motivational unit as well, is my capacity to act effectively to bring about my desired things. An internal locus of control means that I believe that I'm the one who controls things. I put the oar in the water, and I'm the one that decides what direction I go in the river. The external locus of control is the person, well, why even try? They're all out to get me. The Illuminati, they meet every August, and you know they're behind the coronavirus, whatever. Those people are less likely to take actions because they think that their life is preordained and destined and whatnot. The more internal locus of control and self-efficacy that you have, the less stress you have in your life, the more control you feel you have on things, the happier you also tend to be. Now, when it comes to learned helplessness, this is where we don't even try because of previous failures. If there's a fire drill and everybody goes out to the parking lot and they come back in and the kids get to the room before I do, lights are off, doors shut, bunch of people outside the door, and I'll just walk up, open the door, and walk in. And they're all like, whoa, they didn't even try opening the door. Why? Because every time they've seen the lights out and the door shut, they assume it's locked. Why even try? So this idea of learned helplessness is because we've hit failure so many times. Why even try? I'm just going to fail again. So why even go through it? Someone who's going through depression, why even get out of bed? It's just going to be another bad day. You know, the battered wife syndrome, you know, why even try? It's just going to be another abusive relationship and anything else. Children in abusive families, man, if these people can't say they love me, nobody's going to love me. Why even try to start a relationship? You know, someone who walks into my class and just goes, hey, Mr. Poor, I want you to know I can't take tests. You ever taken a psychology test? No. Then shut up. You don't know. You may be able to take tests. They just suck at math. They suck at tests. All of these things are learned helplessness. Okay, certain events are uncontrollable and bad, but when you think that you have no control of making them better, you're not even going to try to make them better. There's a story of a fish tank, and what they had is they had a little fish tank here. This is just an example of a split fish tank, but on this side of the fish tank, let's imagine that there's this little happy little minnow fish, little tiny fish, little mini fish just running around having a good time. They just eat the fish food that comes to the top. And over here were big, ugly predator fish. They were fish who ate other fish, which, by the way, that's not cannibalistic, I don't know. But these big fish ate the little fish, and they were predators of the little fish and everything else. So the big fish eat the little fish. That's what they want to do, except there was a glass partition down the middle. So they put the little fish here, they put the big fish over there, and the big fish see the little fish. And when they see the little fish, immediately they want the little fish, and they, boom, they would hit the glass partition, bam, bam. They keep hitting their face, bam, bam. And then what they started to learn was every time I try to eat these little fish, it hurts my face. It's like getting smacked in the face. So after a while, they decided, you know what, I'm not going to try to eat these little fish anymore because it hurts my face. So after doing that for a few weeks, and they opened up the partition so that this side was now open to this side. And you would think that these fish would stay at their side, and they swam all over the place. But even though they swam all over the place, the big fish didn't try to eat the little fish anymore because the big fish had already learned through learned helplessness. No, every time I try to eat this guy, it hurts my face. Kind of a little bit like what we talked about with taste aversion a little bit earlier. You've now become conditioned. Why even try? You know, last time I've experienced pain. And these fish would even bump into, oh, pardon me, excuse me, don't eat you, you hurt my face. And they would just sort of go through their lives like that. Observational learning, and again, this is latent learning. This is where most of our learning comes from. It's also known as social psychology. We learn by observing and imitating the behaviors of others. Most of human learning is through observation and imitation, including language, the way we dress. We see other people get attention. I want to be more like those people. These girls going to a Lady Gaga concert. You know, everybody likes Lady Gaga, so I got to dress like her. The little boy dressing like dad, going to the football games. Probably not really what he wants to do, but I want to be like dad. You know, a little girl wants to be like mom, and I know this is very stereotypical, male, female, but whatever. You imitate other people, and we do this as little kids. You know, little children will mirror the adults. You know, clap your hands, and then the child claps their hand, and you go through this. Birth to 5, parents, family have a huge influence. 6 to 12, now it's other teachers or other role models on TV. And 12 years on, it's your friends and what you see on social media. So you start to become influenced by what else is out there, and you also become an influencer yourself to some degree. Now, in this cognitive learning through modeling, a gentleman by the name of Albert Bandura did a study. It's a very famous study called the Bobo doll experiment. What a Bobo doll is this guy right here. It's a big inflatable thing with sand on the bottom. So I punch this in the face and it goes down and it comes right back up again. All right, so you take a little Bobo doll and you put it in a room. And then what you do is you ask mom to beat the crap out of the Bobo doll. Mom's job is to beat up the Bobo doll. And it's done in a spotlight. You want to keep mom in the spotlight. And the reason you want to keep mom in the spotlight is because her children are watching her do this. So the children are in another room and they're watching mom beat the crap out of the little Bobo doll. And then the children are asked to go into the room and play with the Bobo doll on their own after watching mom beat the crap out of it. Well, what happens? Let's take a look. This over here is a video by Albert Bandura. This video is also going to be available on the website because I know the quality is not going to be that great here. But here's Bandura and the Bobo doll experiment. No real volume here. So I'll just sort of walk you through it. So here's mom. Mom takes a hammer to the Bobo doll, whack, knocks it down. Again, her children are observing all of this behavior, picks it up, lets it fall down. Great. Keep it in the spotlight so the kid doesn't become distracted by all these other things. Kick it, get it back into the spotlight so the child can focus. There it is. So she kicks it, picks it up, and then gets on top of it and starts to beat the crap out of it. All right, so after mom does this for a while and the children observe and everything else, now the children are put in a room with a bunch of toys. And when they're put in a room with a bunch of toys, you got all these toys all over the place. The child immediately goes after the Bobo doll, just like mom picks it up. Just like mom, I'm going to pick it up again, I'm going to punch it, and all these other things. So just like we pick up an accent, dialect, everything else, we also pick up this aggressive behavior. Just like mom, punch him with both hands. And then mom took a hammer to him, so I'm going to take a hammer to him, whack, just like mom did. And then mom got on top of him and beat the crap out of him, so I should probably do that too. And now he's not even making eye contact, just sort of whacking him, angry look on the face. Right there, hit him on top of the head, and just like mom, like a scene out of The Shining. It's very disturbing. All right, so he beats up the Bobo doll. Now a little bored. Again, no eye contact. And not paying attention to any other toys. Then he suddenly finds this. Whoa, I found a little gun. So now what do? Now I'm punching Bobo doll with the gun and threatening him. Now this is where other stuff comes in. Maybe what the child's seen on TV. Goes right up to the Bobo doll, threatens him a little bit. And now he goes back and grabs the hammer as well. If I'm not mistaken, I'll shoot you right here in the heart. So he knows where the weak spot is. And now he's got the hammer and the gun. So he's hitting him, pistol whipping him, doing the whole thing. So this must just be little boys, right? Little boys observing mom and saying this behavior is okay. So well, let's take a look at little girls. Here's the boy's sister as she is put in the room with the Bobo doll, and she goes right after him. Same as the brother, starts to beat him up just like mom did because that's what she observed. And observe the brother, observe the mother, pick it up like the mom. Mom picked it up, so she picks it up and does the exact same behavior because, again, you saw your parent do it, so it must be okay. She takes a break, has a little hammer, but what, I'll get out of my way. Has a little tea party, drinks a little air. That's all great. But then once she gets done with the tea party, it's right back to the Bobo doll and beating the crap out of it. And there she goes with the hammer, taking it to town, going crazy on the Bobo doll. All right, so anyways, you get the point. It's a monkey see, monkey do sort of behavior that we have going on between that. All right, so again, When you see the child spanking the little baby doll, that's what they learn. You hear the child bullying other kids, they learn that at home. You hear the child cursing, they learn that at home. We learn good behavior, we learn bad behavior, and all sort of comes from who raises us and who we surround ourselves by and everything else. And this reciprocal determinism that we talk about is how does our environment influence us, and we at the same time influence that environment. So although he did not believe all behavior was environmental, he did feel that this environment was significant. Yes, there was still the unconscious. Yes, there was our previous experience, but there's also sort of the environment that we find ourselves in. So the child watching the aggressive parent will become the aggressive child. And again, this goes back to what we talked about before with mirror neurons. We learn from other people. We learn behavior from other people. We learn to empathize with other people. So when one person's feeling pain, we feel pain. So we don't want people to feel pain. Okay, when we see an activity, we feel like we're doing it. Someone scores a touchdown, we put our arms up. We feel like that was us too. When another person smiles, we're more likely to be happy. When another person frowns, we're more likely to be upset. The reason why I'm using and a little bit of an inflection in my voice. If I were to read this going, when another person smiles, we are happier. Often it causes us to smile as well. 93% of communication is nonverbal. And if I read it in a monotone sort of way, you wouldn't really get as much out of it as if I go, hey, this is pretty good, it's pretty exciting. It goes off you as well. So what we learned there. Now, pro-social behavior is positive, constructive, helpful behavior. This is what teachers are supposed to do, and parents are supposed to do, and coaches are supposed to do. It's not just about, it's about making a better person. You know, your kid may not be the best at everything, but can they be a good person? You know, not every student's going to be an A student, but are you getting the most out of this that you can? Are you working up to your ability and everything else? So when you watch shows like on PBS, when you watch Between the Lions, Dora the Explorer, Sesame Street, all these shows have a very positive message. As a matter of fact, they even have a little girl, a little Muppet, I think her name is Julia, who's autistic now. They've got another Muppet who's in a wheelchair. And it sort of shows all these sort of positive things about living in a neighborhood, very diverse, and everyone can get along. And Oscar's a little grouchy, but yeah, you kind of deal with it. So again, their job is to provide very pro-social behavior. Dora will always get to her place at the end. Swiper never works it out. It's always going to come out. It's going to be solved at the end. That's what PBS's job is to do, is because it's paid for by the government. It's pro-social behavior on PBS. Now, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, not necessarily there for a pro-social behavior. They're there to get people to tune in. They want ratings. So how am I going to get ratings? Well, we'll make it so that the kids know everything. The adults aren't really necessary. Look at all these adults on Sesame Street. You don't have a lot of adults on iCarly, The Sweet Life. Where are their parents at? You know, I'm going to work on a cruise ship and tour the world, and parents aren't really necessary. And the parents I have are idiots, and teachers are dumb, and the principals are almost borderline disabled. So it's just not a very, you know, you look at Carly versus the brother's an idiot. The kids know everything. That's what their job is. Their job is to appeal to teens, preteens going, you know everything. Everybody else is screwed up. And it's very appealing for kids to watch that and want to be involved in that. That's not pro-social. And again, you've got everybody with their perfect little faces, their perfect hair, their perfect outfits, their perfect thing to say. It's not realistic. And so this can also lead to a lot of disappointment that kids have, because it's not their job to make the world a better place. It's their job to sell crap in advertising. Now, when it comes to watching violent television, we talked about this a little bit before. Violent television doesn't necessarily cause aggression, but people who are exposed to violent programming are more likely to, in fact, be prone to violence, okay? Because a lot of times in these shows, perpetrators go unpunished 73% of the time, 47% show no harm to the victims, 58% show no pain. You know, show me a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. Where was the episode when he was in jail recovering from a spleen injury? Never happens. You know, we watch these shows and it glorifies violence, and it's all, and we even find ourselves cheering for that offender. So again, this correlation equal causation, that's a little bit tricky. But what they are starting to show is that when the aggressive model is rewarded, it's happening a lot more than the aggressive model being punished. And as a result, people are tending to have a little bit more aggressive actions within their lives. And again, we'll talk about that more when we get to social psychology on how that sort of works out. So other things there on social cognitive theory that wrap us up there. So the next thing that we're going into is lecture 4. If I'm not mistaken, that is going to be on how we think, different ways of thinking and heuristics and all that goes along with that. Until then,